Hello and welcome to a very spooky episode of FM On Demand with Tara Fitzpatrick. I'm your host, Tara Fitzpatrick. And as some of you guys know, I have three little brothers. And when I used to babysit them, I was famous for scaring them with ghost stories. And I don't know why, I've always been this way. I've always been fascinated with it. It's fun to get scared, but it's also kind of fun to learn about the folklore and when we get into urban legends of why people believe things and what it kind of says about society. So, getting to the tricks and treats of the episode, I decided to go to Ohio University virtually, of course. These two people that I have are such an interesting combination. We have Ohio University Culinary Services Executive Pastry Chef Vicki Van Pelt, and we have Southeast Ohio History Center tour guide George Eberts. And George actually is an instructor at Ohio University for physics and astronomy. So he has kind of a skeptic's view, and he also has a lot of good stuff to share with us about separating fact versus fiction, which is sometimes just as interesting, but somehow still just as creepy. And for the food side of it, we find out like all the cool things that the OU dining team has going on just for the entire month of October. Some sweets, some savory stuff. So pull up a cup of cider and enjoy these ghost stories. Thank you so much for being here, Vicki and George.
Hi, Tara.
Hello there.
It's great to have you guys here. And obviously, Ohio University is an epicenter for Halloween celebrations. And I want to start first with Vicki and talk about how the dining team gears up, and specifically in the bakery side, the pastry side, which is what you do. So I'd love to hear like what you're doing during the month of October to kind of gear up for the big day for OU.
Okay, well, we actually start planning during the summer. So we've been planning Halloween for a couple months now. We work together, come up with ideas, themes, just brainstorming sessions. Then once we figure out a theme, we kind of go from there on decorations to what food we're going to serve to what desserts. So, for example, one of our dining courts this year, their theme's going to be Stranger Things.
Ooh, I like
So
it.
I've never seen Stranger Things, so that was
Oh, that's
rough
cool.
coming up with desserts. But I think we've worked together, come up with some good ideas. We also work with a lot of local vendors to provide seasonal items like apple cider,
Um,
pumpkins for decorating, all that. So it's a big process that starts usually about July or August.
yeah, absolutely. And George, I wanted to ask you first a little bit about your background, about how did you get into kind of like the folklore side of things? Because you're kind of a science guy, am I right?
Yes, I am, and my heart and my convictions are science, but you're always drawn to what seems cooler and more fun, and that would be the paranormal and the spooky stuff. You can't ignore that completely without not having any personality.
Hmm.
So I'm worked up on what they now call the ridges, the old asylum grounds from, I hate to say it's so old, but 78 through the time we left there in 93. And in 93, as most people know, we didn't close, we didn't kick anybody out. We moved to a new building and it's still in operation there. So I had about 15 years to spend in a place that most people think is spooky, if
Hmm.
not downright haunted. And I'm sensitive to that. I got my antenna out, dragging in the vibes every year at Halloween time. So um, I was never disappointed in terms of the attention that gets me.
It's true. It's true. And storytelling and folklore is kind of such a big part of college life because, and I think it kind of happens because it's unknown for many people. They're leaving their home for the first time, and it seems like legends and ghost stories kind of have the function of like keeping us safe or scaring us into like being safe, and they sometimes reflect like societal things that are going on too. So I just wanted to see how legends on campus get started and why that folklore is such a part of campus life.
Yeah, I can vouch for things like folklore getting started. There was a rumor that that old body stain was in the old TB hospital. As a result, people broke in and trashed the place. It was actually at a whole nother side of the complex.
So that
So
wasn't even where it
that
was. And
was,
it's, of course, we don't encourage like destroying property or like going places. Like when you're ghost hunting, like let's be respectful, people. Good disclaimer.
that's funny. That's good. When you're ghost hunting, don't step out of line too much.
It's true. Well, the biggest kind of thing on campus that I always heard about, Wilson Hall. And supposedly in the 70s, somebody was practicing looking into the dark arts. They passed away there, and there's a room that's closed off. And then there's also the thing where Wilson Hall is the center of these pentagrams, which kind of, I know that's maybe been debunked because take 5 places anywhere and you can make a pentagram. But I wondered how did this get started? What is it with Wilson Hall? And does it have to do with like the satanic panic in the 70s and 80s that like pentagrams kind of came into the mix? What do you think? Sorry,
Um,
that was a lot of questions all at once.
I think that once that kind of thing gets started, it rolls along by its own momentum, picking up stories and rumors and details that weren't even there in the first place. I don't know why Wilson Hall got picked to be the epicenter of the goofiness in this situation. I've never been in Wilson Hall, and I did not live as a student here at OU in the dorms. So I'm
Gotcha.
unaware of some of the lore that we may be talking about. Um, Seems like just people let their imaginations kind of go. Superstition, maybe part of it's based on fear of the unknown. And any way you can like bottle it up and put it on the shelf, that's a better way of dealing with, no pun intended, with my food service friends here. But that it's hard to say. That stuff has been around forever,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
changes and evolves as decades go by. We know that back in the 1800s there was a big emphasis on channelers and people who could speak to your dead relatives for you.
The
Uh,
spiritualism. Yes.
Spiritualism, that's it. And one of my great heroes in life, and this gets back to the science side of me, is Harry Houdini,
Mm-hmm.
because he went out to spiritualists and busted them.
Yep.
He would dress up like a bereaved old widow man, and he
Mm-hmm.
would cry, and they would read his wife for him, and then he'd turn the lights on, bust him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And yeah, that knocking that those sisters did, they were like double jointed or something, and there's all sorts of smoke and mirrors.
And
And yeah,
he was the greatest magician of all times ever. And he
mm-hmm,
told people, "I am not magic.
mm-hmm,
I'm an
mm-hmm.
illusionist. You may never figure out how I do what I'm doing, but I will tell you it's not actually magic."
Yeah,
So he set about to prove it by going to the people who claim to be magic and busting them. I think that's the stuff of a real hero right there.
he
He
was
would not
bold.
let his profession be used that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So
He's,
I wonder what he would say if he could go to Wilson Hall.
I wonder. And he said if he was able to come back that he would. And they tried every year at the
Mm-hmm.
seance while his wife was still alive, and it never did happen. So
Yeah.
let's take a turn back to the dining halls. Victoria, your specialty is the sweet stuff. So after some trickery, let's have a treat. So what are some of the best sweet things that have been happening? And you've been there for a few years too, so you could name some past ones that you loved also.
Well, this time of year, everybody loves anything with pumpkin.
Mm.
So we do a lot of pumpkin cookies, pumpkin pies, pumpkin bars, pumpkin cakes. Then we also do a lot of seasonal things with like apples,
Mm.
caramel apple cookies, apple crisp.
Mhm.
This time of year, you want the home style comfort food when it starts getting cold. So that's what we've been doing a lot of. Here at OU, our bakery's kind of famous for our cheesecakes. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always a big item also.
Definitely. Cool. All right. So back to George. You have led tours at that old asylum. Is that right? Where you had spent time working. So what kind of people go on the tours? What are they expecting? Did they bring like a ghost hunting equipment?
Nobody has conspicuously brought any ghost hunting equipment. If there's a back pocket module of some kind, I don't know, but I've
Maybe.
never seen people actually set up tripods or anything like that. My tours of the asylum grounds go way back to the 80s when I started into the area of staff development and education at up at that site. And the first people I had to do tours for were new employees just getting orientation and also student nurses.
Mm.
So when we moved out into the new building, I was still doing tours for student nurses. And then the Southeast Ohio History Center got me to do tours to raise money for them. These are our fundraising tours. I do one every month, and sometimes two or three. In October, I could probably do 10,
Oh, for
and
sure.
they'll all be well attended. October is a big month for this stuff, as you can imagine. So um, I learned a lot about the place, not only by reading everything I could, the early history. Um, there's books out there specifically about Athens and about asylums in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I read all of them. And one of the best things I could do would be to talk to the old timers on the staff. There were people
Oh.
in custodial maintenance or maybe the steam plant operation that had been there since the 1940s,
Oh, wow.
and I can still talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I milked them for all it was worth. I and then I could evolve my tour steps, route, points to make, those kinds of things in response to information I got. And I've enjoyed it. The bottom line is I never got tired of it. I've enjoyed doing those tours forever.
Very cool.
So I'm still doing them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if anybody is in the Athens area, we can maybe arrange something. I would love to go see it. I never have been inside. Has anybody ever seen anything or experienced anything while they were along with you? Did they say I got a chill or somebody patted me on the back or something like that?
No, but I must confess I'm a buzzkill when it comes to that kind of thing. I believe that it's not good that mental illness suffered by humans who had no reason to be mentally ill. They just are. It's not their fault. They didn't do anything to deserve it. It comes with a human condition. And now all of a sudden you're looked upon as unclean or, reeking of devilness or something like that. I mean, it just rubs me the wrong way. I know too many of those patients and what they've been through, them and their families go through dealing with this. Um, Also, I should mention that I grew up in Columbus on the west side. I was less than 1 block away from the uh, what we now know today as Twin Valley Psychiatric, but it's also known in the past as the Hilltop, the big
Mm-hmm.
mental. It is a Kirkbride
Mm-hmm.
building. It's like taking our Kirkbride building and putting it on steroids. It was
Mm.
twice as long and a whole story taller.
Oh, wow.
And I could ride my bike around there when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So the architecture and the vibes in general and the people there never spooked me like
Yeah.
some people say they do. And I get the people's firsthand experiences. Well, I'm probably not there to share it with them. I doubt that it would happen if I was. It never seems to happen when I'm with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm a buzzkill for that stuff.
A buzzkill at
Um,
Ohio University.
that's
It's like,
right.
how could those two things go together? And I think
Another thing I teach astronomy. I teach the evening time observational lab. We go out and do field trips.
oh, cool.
I've never seen a UFO. So I'm
Yeah.
really, dead in the water for them kind of thrills.
Well, and you guys are near the Mothman too. That's right across the way. No, that's
Yeah, now
and
that I want to see.
yeah. Now, Vicki, you are from West Virginia. Did you grow up hearing about the Mothman? Did you ever try to find the Mothman?
I did grow up hearing about the Mothman. Point Pleasant, they have a Mothman statue. I visited it. The Mothman Museum I visited. Yeah, it's a big thing in West
It
Virginia.
is the cutest town. Like I recommend for
Oh yeah.
anybody looking for
Hmm.
a little trip. I went with my boyfriend a few years ago and we had Mothman pizza. They make
Oh,
like
yeah.
an actual I that was amazing. The
Yeah.
Mothman pizza.
Well,
But we
and you've got to get your picture taken with the Mothman statue.
oh yes, it's the statue is really something else. You have to
Yeah.
see it to believe it for sure. And yeah, I wanted to going back to George, I think that was a very good point with your perspective of somebody that's in the business of caring for people, mental health, where like a lot of times these old asylums, they are seen as spooky. And I think it's like it has to do with the terrible way that patients were treated, like, you know, in the past century before things sort of got better. So maybe it's kind of like it's echoes of that. It has that kind of heavy vibe to it.
Yeah, a lot of times though, even that is exaggerated just to
Mm,
make the spooky stuff more
hmm.
vivid. Like,
Yeah.
uh, I know that there's stories of cruelty done to our patients at Athens that never happened,
Mm,
not in any recorded record, not in talking to old timers. It the that kind of thing has a life of its own. There's something in the human brainstem that sends out special chemicals when you get into the lurid and the awful. Like, oh, they did that to those poor patients. Oh, anything that makes you go, oh, can be manipulated.
yeah, there's something like that. It's like the truth doesn't get in the way of a good story and they want to make it
Exactly,
spookier, right?
exactly.
And
So I have my doubts about some of them. I'm not denying that institutions of that kind were not the paragon. It wasn't like Holiday Inn,
sure, yeah, yeah.
but for the time, it was probably a lot better than the poor rural environments that a lot of them people folks came from.
Right. They a lot of the people may have been doing the best that they
Yeah.
could, for
You
sure.
got
Yeah.
3 square meals a day. You got the
Hmm.
guarantee of a bed and a job working with the other patients. And it's like
Yeah.
3 square meals a day sounds familiar to the food service people, right? You didn't have before you had asylums. You would get somebody in town to take care of your loved one, take care, quote unquote. There were county homes and personal arrangements with people that made money off of your loved one, but there were no standards of care. You had no guarantee of good food or a decent place to sleep or
Hmm.
anything to do all day. They'd take your uncle who's schizophrenic and promised to do the best they could, and you wanted to get rid of him anyway, so you took their promises for face value.
Yeah.
That was the universe that mentally ill people were born into
Hmm.
before they invented this thing called asylums. And then 150 years later, asylums are supposed have sort of reverted back to a Spanish Inquisition kind of reality. And it
Right.
wasn't that way at all.
Yeah.
There were food, camaraderie, security, and a little bit of weirdness thrown in just to spice it up a bit.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. But you had kind of said I read an interview where you were kind of raining on someone's parade, being a skeptic, and you said that you had many times where at night you wandered the halls of the old asylum while you still were, and you kind of were like daring a ghost. You're like, "Hey, come get me." And I've done similar things because I grew up Catholic, and Catholic people are very superstitious and it's and it's like why would you tell us not to use ouija boards if they didn't work? So of course the first thing we do would try to use them and nothing. Like I have many things. Like I really am curious. I would love to see a ghost. I've seen nothing. So and so tell me about how you would kind of walk around like late at night. You were like, did I hear something, or what was that like?
Well, I had to work night shift on a regular basis. I didn't work night shift all the time per se, but I'm doing staff education programs like crisis intervention skills with the patient, CPR and first aid. Everybody needs a 2 hour update every year in both of those areas and more, different kinds of safety training, especially.
Hmm.
So I'd be working have a program at 9 p.m. for the 3 to 11 shift. And then they swapped out the people, and I'd come back at midnight or 1 to do a program for the night shift. and maybe one more after that. Go home about 6 or 7 in the morning. I really like that kind of jumpy kind of schedule.
That's a wild schedule. Yeah,
And
that's
especially
rare.
if doing astronomy like I do, I get to see a
Oh,
lot of what
yeah.
goes on before dawn on those kinds of nights. So I got an hour and a half to kill around my office up at the building, and I get curious, and I decided to use my accent. I knew from a number of different situations how I could get into the attic or the abandoned part. Part of the time I was there, the west wings were abandoned. Those are the oldest and spookiest looking spaces, and I knew how to get in there from my exploring around. So I would go in there and just kind of hang out, walk around. I wanted to see the wind, the shadows of the trees in the wind, and the sound of raccoons in the drain pipes, and the sudden blasts of cold that were supposed to be there too, that kind of thing. And it could get my chills up, It's like, wow, this is really cool. And I really did feel the heebie-jeebies. I got to admit, that's why I went there in the first place, and it wasn't like anything I couldn't explain.
Yeah.
Except one night, there was a sudden blast of cold, and the lights went out, and I saw these people wearing sheets floating around in the darkness. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't being haunted or
anything. George, what do you think it was?
No, I'm kidding. I didn't see
oh my
anything like
gosh.
that. I imagined it a lot. I thought it would be cool. Never actually happened, though.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of getting chills, I wanted to ask Vicki, as it gets colder in Southern Ohio, which not as cold as Northern Ohio where I am, but it gets chilly down there. What are some of the hearty dishes that make everybody feel cozy that you've been doing lately?
Obviously, soups and stews are really popular. Chilies, good, something that's going to coat your stomach, as well as like home style foods like casseroles, meatloaf, chicken pot pie, some of the heavier items that'll stay with you. And also we go through a lot of hot chocolate, warm apple cider. And as far as desserts go, a lot of warmer desserts like crisp cobblers.
Oh, I love a cobbler.
Those are always nice when the weather gets colder.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Make everything nice and cozy on campus.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we're almost running out of time, not quite, but I wanted to ask both of you just kind of to talk about just what Athens is like this time of year and maybe any other quick stories that either wanted to share. We can start with you, Vicki.
First.
Yeah, go.
So I'm fairly new to Athens. I've been here about 4 years now. I just think with the, historic architecture and the old trees, it can kind of take on an eerie atmosphere. Once the leaves start changing colors, it, gets dark early. I don't really have any supernatural experiences myself, but I've heard many from coworkers. Everybody, seems to have at least one.
What's an example of somebody? You don't have to say their name.
So one of my coworkers actually told me a story about her son brought a brick home. Well, she said, where did you get that brick? Because some strange things started happening. And here he had taken it from the ridges.
Oh, boy.
Wow. So she made him immediately take the brick back and make peace, say, I'm bringing you back. I don't want any trouble. And she claims that the strange things that were happening stopped.
I say that's why I'm afraid of antique stores. It's like, boy, you take something home. Are you kidding me? I don't know about that. Not sure about that.
Yeah.
That is a cool story, though. I don't believe it because I walked on them bricks every day, coming and going. But that's a cool story.
It is. Did you have anything to add, George? Just about Athens in general, the vibe.
Yeah, the vibe for me, I think goes back to the first couple of autumns I spent in Athens after I moved here from Columbus. Two things happened that still stick in my mind as kind of blood curling. One of them was that within a few months of when we moved here, two young people turned up missing in Logan, Ohio, and they were abducted and killed while they were walking along a railroad track. The rumor had been that she was the daughter of the guy who abducted and killed them, and it was just young lovers not supposed to see each other. You know how that is, and
Yeah.
that always haunted me. That for some reason that particular story just haunted me. But the other thing was, within a year or so of when we moved here, also in the fall, Jonestown went on down in Guyana, the Jimmy Jones
Oh,
massacre,
yeah. Very
and
scary.
it was just saturating the news for weeks. So those two things kind of colored the autumn in Southeast Ohio for me.
Yeah, it's things that happen that yes. And finally, Vicki, I wanted to see any specific events that the dining team has cooked up.
We have events all across campus. This week we have our Harvest Fest at Baker Center. Our dining courts are both have special events planned for Halloween. One has like a pumpkin patch. The other one has kind of like a pumpkin throwing where you can throw some pumpkins off the top of the building. So
Fun.
maybe you can get your aggression out there.
I like
My
So
that.
wife would
we
love
have
that.
events all over campus this time of year.
Oh,
Yeah, my wife would be tuned right in if she were here.
very cool. Well, you guys have brought it today. You have brought the tricks and the treats. I so appreciate you being here with me today, and be sure that you both have a happy Halloween.
Thank you. You too.